Great morning, my friends. This is your boy Dragon. Don't know why I always say your boy, because we haven't determined that yet. But coming to you with another Rise Up with Dragon. Um, welcome, everybody. Welcome to what I call the eye of the storm and also the playing field of your conscious mind. This podcast's intention is to remove the blindfolds from your program mind for this little time that we're together so that you can gain access and tap into higher levels of consciousness, as well as tap into your true great potential. Let's find out what's there if we unveil it. So how do we do this? We do this with our straight to the punch 10-minute deep thought podcast format, our weekly blog, which should come out today if you're watching this live, called The Dragon's Lair, One from the Vault, as well as our upcoming online courses and books. I just want to welcome you, my friends, to another Rise Up with Dragon.
Great morning, world! Welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon podcast with your host, Dragon!
So great morning, everybody. Just got to give props to my lovely wife and creator and owner of Karma Mind, which is just an awesome meditation podcast that so many people are listening to with her just beautiful, angelic South African voice. She just really, really helps people bypass their analytical brain and mind. So check it out. They are our sponsors. Check out Karma Mind.
Get into the float state.
So have an amazing day
meditations
ahead of us,
Gia.
Right? We recognize that. Today's episode and my journal entry is called The Agenda Drop, Free at Last. Awesome. So we had a little technical difficulties there. But today's episode is called The Agenda Drop, Free at Last. And I just really love this one. And it really lends to a lot of the work that I'm doing in the book. And, you know, for those of you that haven't heard, the book is finished and it's in its first draft edit and things like that. So really, really excited. And I've got a couple of dragon thoughts coming to you before we get into this one. This is actually a short one today. And my goal today, one of my intentions that I wrote this morning, and I'm offering it to you if it suits you, is to speak less and listen more today. That's a wonderful, wonderful approach to having a better day today, because the more we speak, the more we carry our programming from yesterday and things like that. So a couple of thoughts. And, you know, one of the thoughts was this idea of doing things that stress you out or that you're afraid of or cause anxiety. So one of them for me, if you know my story, the very nature upon which I created this podcast and decided to do it live, which, as you can see, sometimes, you know, there's a lot of technical difficulties that could go wrong, and I don't have anybody else help me with it. So I take the responsibility of it all. Why? Because it's very scary. Triggers feelings. We're going to talk about feelings today. Triggers feelings of anxiety and fear and all that stuff. But I was just wondering if, because before, whenever I'm about to do something like this, and, you know, I know that this is one of those things that triggers those things. And that's a whole other concept of like predetermining what you're going to be afraid of. But I was just entertaining the idea of, from a curious place, I wonder if I could take something like this, and I'm kind of settled into the idea right now. I wonder if I could take something that I'm typically scared of, something that typically triggers feelings of anxiety, and actually rewire my brain so that it is actually something that triggers the calm in me, right? So I know it's possible because I have bouts of it every now and then. So that's one of the things that I'm going to start working on. And I don't know what it is for you, or who it is for you that triggers anxiety. And, you know, always make sure you check out that other episode I did with the amazing Dr. Russell Kennedy, who's the anxiety MD. He just has a wonderful approach with it. But I'm just kind of going into that other space where we can kind of reclaim control of ourselves. So I'm practicing that. So whatever it is for you, play around with the idea that maybe not only you can get better at handling it with the interface response system kind of concept from the book, but see if you can actually rewire your brain so that that thing actually creates calm. So when we're talking about feelings are unavoidable. So it's when we place thoughts to the feelings that we become victim of them. Think about that for a second. I was just talking about that. So like if I'm about to go live or something good or bad happens, it automatically triggers feelings. So that's what I'm just 100% sure of, is that I have no control over my feelings. Now I can change them over time, but it's when my mind starts to put thought to them, and there's science behind that. And I go over that in my work as well. But there's this space that exists between having feelings, which are unavoidable, but then putting thoughts to them, which are 50% unavoidable. So if you can learn, there's a lot of talk about cognitive distancing, creating space between a stimulus and your response, so that you have the ability to trigger a conscious response. So that, where does that space exist? I was talking to my wife, who does a lot of work in cognitive distancing and CBT work as a therapist. And I was asking her, when you're doing that work and you're distancing yourself, where does the space exist? And I think I've identified that it's the place where you have the unavoidable feeling and trying to distance yourself in that space before you put thought to it. Because once you put thought to a feeling, it becomes an emotion. And that's what triggers, the ineffective, inefficient response system. So one of the things that I notice people say when they haven't stopped that is they say, I just think that, or I just feel that. Right. And then that if you think and feel something, it turns in, I just know that. Right. So that's my little gift to you is, if you catch yourself saying, I think and I feel a lot, that could be you putting thought to your feelings. Right. So the agenda drop, free at last. Let's get into it. So the path to true freedom and experiencing what I like to call the calm, right? That unfuckable state in your life where, you're aware of things, but they just affect you differently. So the path to that, idea of the calm, where we can begin to actually, here's the value of it: roam free and experience all that life has to offer. It's there for us all. So that's the first thing, is that's an opportunistic thing. It's there for us all. So it's an option, right? We actually have the option of taking that path to freedom and the calm every day. But there's a challenge associated with it. So every day, this is one thing that I'm an observation of in myself and all the people that I work with. Every day there's a fork in the road. And sometimes you don't know about that fork, but every day there is a fork in the road where you can continue down the path laid out for you, right? That's the easy one. You always notice that path. It's the path you're on right now, most likely. You can continue down the road, the path that's laid out for you, or take what other people call the road less traveled, right? What's interesting, and you always understand that the road less traveled is uncomfortable, it's inconvenient, and that's where growth takes place, right? So it's the right road to take. However, we always find ourselves on the path of least resistance, right? Makes sense. So what's interesting to me about this other path is that this other path, the road less traveled, it's often hidden from our sight, because we know we can justify and logically decide that it's the path that we should take because of this whole concept of growth, but it's very often hidden from sight. So it's hidden from the eyes of the unconscious programmed mind, right? That is just simply following the leaders of their life. So when we're living unconsciously, we're able to proceed. This is what's interesting about this path that most of you are on. When you're unconscious, you're able to somehow proceed down that road most traveled without even looking, right? It's effortless. You've got it on autopilot. That's the whole hamster wheel thing, right? Without even looking. If you're asleep, There's no reason to look. If you're going through life right now, sleepwalking, I mean, how many people take a look around while they're asleep, right? So it's almost on autopilot. So proven that we notice, this is another way you can prove it. We notice this, that where time kind of just like elapses and goes by while we're walking, running, flying, driving, and you don't even notice that the time goes by. And I know you know what I mean by that. So we must look and take note of what options that we truly have exist and practice being more curious in consciousness or in conscious. That's the idea. As you go through your day today, if you just embrace and just accept the fact that this is going on, that you're most likely going down the path most traveled, but there is another path, you might not be able to see it, or you might see glimpses of it, but just overpower it and think that it's not what I'm talking about. All you have to do is just become curious and more conscious of this whole pattern and look for it. So when we do catch ourselves, this is interesting. When we do catch ourselves following our predetermined path or a predetermined agenda, you know, to the name of the podcast today, remember this: when you catch yourself in that predetermined agenda, remember this: agenda is the strategy and plan for success of the unconscious mind. Let me read that again. Agenda is the strategy and plan for success of the unconscious mind, most likely learned outside in. And you know what an agenda is? It's your plan, right? It's your plan that's associated with some sort of an outcome. I'm just entertaining the idea that that is something that was most likely innovated and created as a strategy for your unconscious mind and whatever it thinks that it's supposed to do to succeed, which was probably learned from the outside in. So once it's locked in, remember what I said, once feelings turn into emotions, right? Once it's locked in, the unconscious zombie just follows its strategy and often misses when you're unconscious and you're just following that because you think, you know, your brain has taken over. It often misses the subtle little clues and signs that present the additional options available that may provide an extraordinary shift in perspective and direction. Have you ever taken a moment to remove the mask of your agenda and your programmed identity and ask your soul what it truly desires? Think about that. Have you ever stopped and just asked your soul what it truly desires today? What soul, what do you truly desire today? Now, if you do that, you might find that just like a kid that wants to go off path and explore the unexplored places of life, your soul does too. So what's the takeaway from that? Embrace and understand this process that's going on. It's not your fault. It's the way your brain was wired for survival, right? But it's getting in the way of making good decisions in your life. And one of those decisions is to take that path less traveled, the road less traveled. But in order for you to do that, you're going to have to drop the agenda of your subconscious mind. So you have to identify that you're following it, drop the agenda of your subconscious mind, and then just ask your soul what it truly desires. And then you'll see that path less traveled, the road less traveled, present itself. Make sense? Love and appreciate you all. Get on the newsletter, go to riseupwithdragon.com and it'll pop up. Get on our newsletter because we're going to be giving out I guess in PDF form, a copy of the first chapter of the book. The book is really, really special. Very excited about it. It's about 8 years of work. It's really going to help people. And it's a fascinating journey to take the journey of the dragon. Love when you guys rate and review us and share our podcast at iTunes and things like that. Rise Up with Dragon. And I love and appreciate you. And I wish nothing more than you and have a great day. Have a wonderful one.